One of my favorite things to do here on Seahawks Forever is to identify new, not so new sometimes, young, up-and-coming content creators, people who focus on the NFL, usually at large, the entire league, not just the Seattle Seahawks, and have them on the show, pick their brain and get their insight. And because they're not Seahawk fans, sometimes their opinions aren't exactly like mine, and they're very interesting, and it leads to great discussion, great debate, and you all seem to like it as well. Well, today, I have a treat for you. Garrett Greenley runs the Football Analysis YouTube channel, closing in on 200,000 subscribers. And I'm telling you, this young man is a rising superstar. And not just because he really, really loves what the Seahawks have done, not just in the draft, but this entire offseason. And so I think you're going to love what he has to say. We'll pick his brain about the Seahawks, why he thinks they're having such a good offseason, and take a small look ahead to the 2026 draft, and specifically what the first round might look like, positional strengths, and who he mocked to the Seahawks in the first round for 2026. Garrett Greenley of the Football Analysis YouTube channel, coming up next on Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
One of the other things that Garrett and I talk about is I get his thoughts on the news today that the NFL upheld the Tush Push as a legal play, despite some heated and even bizarre closed-door meetings between owners and some special guests brought in as players, and things got a little heated. You can read Adam Schefter's writing about that on ESPN, among others. Really interesting stuff. And interesting certainly here in that the Seattle Seahawks seem to have changed their vote in that area. John Schneider on his radio show shortly before the draft said, we are not in favor of banning the Tush Push. But yet they are not one of the 10 teams that voted for it or against it. I'm sorry. They actually voted to ban it, 22-10. The league needed 24 votes to ban the Tush Push. They only got 22, and the Seahawks were one of the ones that voted to ban it, seemingly switching course. Before we get into this interview, if you would, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to support me and the channel as an independent content creator doing this full time. And if you hit that bell, you'll always be notified of new content, which occurs almost daily. All the other ways that you can support the channel, including ways you can donate, are listed and linked down below in the description. I will also link Garrett's YouTube channel, but let's not waste any more time. Let's get into this. My discussion today with Garrett Greenley of the Football Analysis channel. Well, Garrett, it's a pleasure to have you on the channel. I've been looking forward to this for a couple of weeks. I'm glad we were able to sync up our schedules. I want to start with this. You've got some really strong thoughts on the Seattle Seahawks, and so I obviously want to dig into that. But first off, let's start with the most recent subject in the NFL. This thing had a lot of buzz around it for the last couple of weeks, actually a couple of months going back to the original meetings. The Tush Push ultimately fails. The ban on the Tush Push fails today. They come up 2 votes short, 22-10. There was some drama in the boardroom, it sounds like. All sorts of things came on. Some special guests showed up. Ultimately, things are going to stay the same. What are your overall thoughts on the rule and the fact that it's going to remain?
My whole thing is why, penalize one team for being truly elite at the Tush Push with Philadelphia and say, hey, you 31 other teams, you can't do it this well, so we're going to ban it. I'm not a fan of banning the Tush Push. And there was a lot of drama. There was a whole Jeffrey Lurie tweet where apparently he was begging and pleading for people to not ban it. That was apparently in the owners' exclusive meeting. But the fact that it was 22-10, we're only 2 votes off. I would be pretty surprised a year from now if it's not banned. So I am kind of heading into the 2025 season with very much a say farewell to the Tush Push type year. I think this is the Tush Push last dance, if you will.
Yeah, it does seem like something that's ultimately going to get passed. Maybe just needs a tweak in the language. It certainly gained votes from when it was initially brought up, I think around the combine or the initial owners meeting shortly before that. So we'll have to keep track of that. I just want to get your thoughts on that. Before we get into Seahawks stuff, I just want to, first of all, congratulate you on the success of your YouTube channel, Football Analysis. I discovered you through Twitter. You popped up in my feed because you were saying good things about the Seahawks. It's funny how that happens, right? And so I reached out to you and we agreed to have you on the show. And then I checked out your YouTube channel because surprisingly, you don't link it in your bio on Twitter.
I'll fix that actually.
My goodness, yeah, you should at 100 because then maybe it would succeed. I kid. 191,000 subscribers. You've got the platinum plaque there on your wall back there. You started the channel in 2018. Just tell our viewers a little bit about your journey and why you decided to shape the channel the way you did, and to what you attribute all your success.
So first off, appreciate the words as always. But it's honestly for me when I started back in 2018. I was what I would call half interested in YouTubing. You know, I kind of equate it to, and I've been overweight in my life before, and there were times where I would be interested in a diet and not committed to the diet. Now that's how I was with YouTubing. You know, I was
preaching the choir.
Right. I would, you know, do one thing here and think that was good enough. And then so 2018 passed. I didn't have a lot of success, obviously, because I wasn't committed. 2019, I was entering my senior year of college, and not that they're like my parents were applying pressure, like, hey, buddy, you better figure this out. But I was applying pressure on myself that, hey, I'm going to be, you know, in the real world here in less than a year. So August 2019, I kind of just said, or it was actually July 31st, 2019. It was kind of a pivotal day in my life, but I just said, like, I'm going all in. Let's see what happens. And even in the worst case, I kind of just said, like, hey, if this doesn't work out, I can live with myself if I give it everything. So I said, I'm going to give it 3 years. And eventually, you know, success followed. COVID definitely helped out with that.
Sure.
COVID kind of was a ramp, if you will. And just there's been so much trial and error over the past 6 years. There really has. But I'm really humbled to be where we are now, and I really appreciate you having me on. And on the channel, I really try to, you know, not scream takes about, you know, how the Cowboys are destined to go to the Super Bowl this year, and just try to be the change that I want to see in sports media. Would be the way that I would describe the channel. Is, you know, I want well thought out videos and just, you know, looking at situations and teams' futures. And Seattle is a bright future, for example, which we'll discuss shortly. But that's the way that I would describe the channel, is kind of the change that I would like to see in sports media over the next couple of years.
Well, it's a welcome and appreciated approach. So kudos to you. What was your field of study in college?
It was business administration and minor in marketing. So it was,
I was using that, right?
I appreciate it. Yeah. So the initial plan was, I actually don't really talk about the real world version that much, but I'm actually a FedEx alumni. I drove a forklift, and the plan was for me to just work my way up the corporate ladder. And then hopefully I said to myself that if I was going to go that route, that hopefully by the time I was 29, 30 years old, that I'd be like a regional manager or just really high up and just slowly work my way up the chain. But for me, fortunately, football analysis worked out.
Yeah. How do the parents like it?
They love it. They love it. They love it.
Good. Well, let's get to your thoughts on the Seahawks, and let's start with the draft, which was, now a month ago. It seems like it was just yesterday. I think this was the first tweet of yours that caught my eye. You really, really liked the Seahawks draft, which led me to your video where you graded the draft class, and you gave the Seahawks an A+. I think one of only 3 that you handed out. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
What was it that you liked about that 11-man class that you felt so strongly about to give them that grade?
So there's a couple, right? So I'm going to reference my big board here. Not that my big board means everything, of course, but they selected really talented players. Now, if you go by my true big board, in theory, they reached, ironically, as I said, they selected talented players. They reached, in theory, on Gray's Able, as I had him at 23, and I want to say I had Evenwari at 47, or rather 48, and they drafted those guys at 18 and 35. But Seattle is a team where, and this doesn't apply to every team, but it does to Seattle, where I'm willing to dismiss a couple of pick reach, especially with a player like Nick Evenwari, who we'll break down a little more in a second. But for Seattle to need an interior offensive lineman, as well as you know, based on last year, and to select a player who I think is a floor raiser in Gray's Able, so what, they reached 4 or 5 or 6 spots in my big board. I don't care if you reach 4 or 5 spots in the middle of the first round to draft, in my opinion, a player that will start for, I would say, at least the next 3 or 4 years. I don't feel comfortable going anything beyond that, especially in the NFL, just with how fast things can change. But a floor-raising starting left guard next to Charles Cross. And then Evenwari, to me, is obviously, when you have a height, weight, player or a height, weight, speed guy like Eamon, you're naturally going to have the comparisons to Cam Chancellor, and that's very unfair to Eamon, but he's a player that is going to be a specific niche player in the Seahawks defense where, we don't want to have him thinking about 5 or 6 things before the play. It's very much going to be just, hey, Nick, go read this play, go read this exact player before the snap, go run and chase and do what you do best. And Mike Macdonald is one of my favorite football minds in the NFL, and when he was the Ravens defensive coordinator, not just one, but multiple players. Basically, the way that to summarize his defense and why I like this for Eamon is they would have these really complicated and complex plays that you would see on the all-22 where, guys are moving everywhere, guys are doing this, and they would call it just something as simple as like couch or red or whatever. And it would have all these code words within the play. And basically that, this guy's going to drop, we're going to run a simulated pressure. Eamon is going to blitz, and we're going to have, somebody drop back. We're going to have Derek Hall drop back in coverage and just throw the offenses off. Look, I could go on about the Seahawks. I love everything they did in this class. And Elijah Arroyo was another really good player. Jalen Milroe is a perfect developmental quarterback. Now, developmental does not automatically mean he's going to succeed, but I do like the developmental quarterback with Milroe. And Torrey Horton was one of my favorite just selections in the class or selections in the draft in terms of value. I had him on my top 100. They drafted him at 166. And then another player I had on my top 100 who realistically I don't think is going to have that much of an impact in Damian Martinez. I had him around player 80 on my big board. Obviously, I got to think how to word this. I don't want Damian Martinez to have that big of an impact as a rookie because that would probably imply that Kenneth Walker or Zach Charbonnet would get hurt. But the fact that he's a talented football player and you drafted him in the 7th round, A+ draft for Seattle.
When you talk about Gray Zabel and him being a slight reach, it was such a strong topic of conversation around here and to some extent league-wide about positional value and about how high you take a guard, right? But I wonder if that's shifting as we see the league changing from, everything's been light boxes recently because teams were spreading things out. Now we're seeing the pendulum swing back the other way and offenses are getting bigger and more physical. The Philadelphia Eagles are the greatest example of that, and it just brought them a title, right? Big, strong offensive lines, heavy running game, play action pass off of that. Do you see that shifting where maybe 2 years from now, just to pick an arbitrary period of time, that maybe a Tyler Booker going at 12 or 13 and a Gray Zabel going at 18 won't seem so out of place?
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. And I mean, look at all of the running backs that had success last year. And Bijan Robinson, I want to say off the top of my head, he had around 1,400 total yards. Nobody batted an eye because of the year Saquon had, because of the year Derrick Henry had, Josh Jacobs, and 1,400 yards, whether it's in 16 or 17 games, is an incredibly impressive year. And nobody really talks about it because of how many great seasons running backs had last year. So look, I'm very much if you have a good offensive lineman in front of you, why, and that would be a double, why try and swing for a triple when you have a double right in front of you? And I think Gray Zabel is a floor raiser, and sure, he has a limited ceiling. I don't think he's going to be, a multiple time all pro, of course, but if you can raise the floor of a room that desperately needed it, combined with a team that I think is already really good in Seattle, it's a pairing that I'm all for every time.
So that leads me to another video you did a few weeks ago, shortly after the draft, and it was entitled, and I believe I'm going to just steal this title and use it as a little teaser in the title of this video is probably how that's going to go. The Seahawks are doing everything right. I mean, that was the title of the video. Certainly caught my eye. I wasn't the only one, 132,000 views and counting. So outside of the draft, which we've already established you loved, what are the other things you liked about their approach this offseason?
So I'm a big fan in free agency of if you can sign a player to a 2-year deal, and I'll use a couple of other examples, not just Seattle here, but if you can sign a player to even if it's a 3 or 4-year deal, whatever, but what really matters is the guarantees, right? So if you sign a player, and New England signing Stephon Diggs is a perfect example, Seattle signing Cooper Kupp is a perfect example. New England gave Stephon Diggs, it was a near $70 million contract over 3 years. And, when you look at that first number, it's, oh my gosh, how can you give a 32-year-old receiver off a torn ACL a $70 million contract? Or in Seattle's case, Cooper Kupp, who has not, he certainly doesn't have perfect attendance. How can you give him as much money as they did? What really matters is the guarantees. And if somebody, if they gave him a $150 million contract, if only 20 of it's guaranteed, the rest of it is just agent talk. So for Seattle to give Sam Darnold a 3-year, $100 million contract with only about 55 of it being guaranteed, when you look at all of the guys that are young in Seattle's roster that are eventually going to get contracts, whether it's Charles Cross, whether it's Kenneth Walker, whether it's Tariq Woolen, I know is a bit of a source that can be, up and down depending on the Seahawks fan, but Devin Witherspoon is a good example, right? All of those guys that are going to get paid at some point. Do you look at any of those situations and say, you know what, man, Sam Darnold he stunk. He was a 1-year wonder in Minnesota. He came to Seattle and he was awful. He was Jet Sam Darnold, and we can't pay Devin Witherspoon now because of Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
No, exactly. So when you look at that, when you look at the DeMarcus Lawrence signing, another floor-raising player that helps Seattle's defense, who still has some juice in the tank, and even Cooper Kupp for that matter, who raises the floor of the receiving room for at least a year, hopefully 2, but at least a year for now. Combined with the A+ draft class, one of only 3 classes that received an A+ from me, and especially a couple of UDFAs as well that Seattle brought in. I loved everything they did this offseason in terms of going from a team that already won 10 games last year to improving the roster, in my opinion, in a significant way.
You talk about the floor, and you've mentioned it here on the show already a couple of times. I've seen it in other videos that they are you call them a high floor team. But what about the ceiling? One of the things that's been a big topic of conversation for us here in the Pacific Northwest the last couple of years is we like the youth on the roster. We like how it's spread out across a number of position groups. Over 40 rookie contracts currently on the 90-man roster. There's a lot of players we like, but are there enough blue chip players on this roster? When you look at a team like the 49ers a couple of years ago, I did an episode where we just kind of counted blue chip players in the NFC West. Seattle had 3 or 4 we could identify, and we might have been kind with that. San Francisco had upwards of 10 or 11. Do the Seahawks have enough players that are perhaps on the verge of being breakout blue chip players to be able to potentially contend?
So Seattle, this goes back to, doing everything right, because the thing is, you can't build Rome in one day. You can't you can't get everything in one offseason, right? But if you ask me right now, do I think Seattle is going to win the Super Bowl this year? Maybe even next year? I would say probably not, just because of how hard it is to win a single Super Bowl. But they are taking all of the right steps. I mean, they even by bringing in Jalen Milroe, I'll just use this as an example in terms of what they're doing the right way. At worst, if I'm the Seahawks offensive coordinator heading into the week, I am spending time having Jalen Milroe be a short yardage situation guy. Once we get into the, not just the 20-yard line in the red zone, but the 5 to 10, that really the red area of the red zone, we need to have a score. I am spending time every week creating packages for Jalen Milroe. And what that does, in addition to having our guys be prepared for it, you inevitably force the opponent to spend time game planning against a player in Jalen Milroe who not a lot of teams have. I mean, this is a player whose rushing ability, definitely not passing ability, because he's a 2-time league MVP, but his rushing ability, I would say, is pretty close to Lamar Jackson's. Now, like I said, he's a developmental quarterback for a reason, but just to have the threat of that player in the red zone every single week, I really do think Seattle's touchdown percentage and ultimately points per game should go up this year just by having that type of player by default. And then you throw in the fact that, hey, we drafted a good player in Gray Zabel in the first round to help improve what was a significant weakness. Now, to go full circle and to really answer your question, I personally don't think Seattle's going to win a Super Bowl this year or probably even next, but that's strictly because of how hard that is. But when you look at the simple goal of improving the roster year after year after year, they are doing everything right in that aspect.
It's funny that you talk about the Jalen Milroe idea on short yardage, which has been discussed since the day that he was drafted at pick 92 in the draft, on the day that the Tush Push was saved, because the dude's, he's a thick 220 pounds. He squats 500 pounds. I think if we see the Tush Push, it's going to be with Jalen Milroe and potentially not Sam Darnold. Let's stay there for a moment before we look ahead at the quarterback position. Your view on how much, if any, the gap there is between Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, after the Seahawks had to pivot to Darnold when Smith wanted out.
Oh boy, this could ruffle some feathers, because I know the Geno defenders, they are staunch, like they are big Geno guys, and rightfully so, because Geno, over the past couple of years, there was one throw in particular. I pretty sure you know which one I'm referring to. The one in the Superdome against New Orleans, the one where he just fitted just in I mean, he fit a football through a mailbox, right? But
Tyler Lockett.
Yes, the big touchdown. Yep, right before halftime. Yep. So the thing is Geno in 2025 with where Sam Darnold will be in 2025, I don't think there is that big of a difference. And one of the reasons that I was also pro trading Geno Smith was because when you look at Geno Smith, okay, yes, he revived his career in Seattle. He definitely had great moments. I mean, the 2022 season was awesome, and that was the year that he made that throw against New Orleans. It was an insane throw that not a lot of players in the league are making. And Geno would regularly make these throws that, again, not a lot of players in the NFL are making. But when you look at, like you said earlier, 40 plus players on the roster with rookie scale contracts, you're going to have to pay all of them. Geno is obviously not getting any younger. He was going to be, 35 and then next year, 36. So I was all for trading him now before, oh man, this guy at 35 didn't have a good year. Let's try and just salary cap dump him. And hopefully, we get maybe a 7th round pick for him. So you got a top 100 pick for him. And in that situation, I'm all for the trade. But I don't think there's going to be that much of a difference between where Sam was, or where Sam will be in 2025 versus where Geno was last year. And I think there's also a part where I think some people inevitably dismiss Sam because of the first several years of his career, but this was the guy who finished top 5 in the NFL in touchdowns last year. And sure, you can say, well, he had Justin Jefferson or whatever, but he still had to make the plays. I mean, he threw for over 4,000 yards. This was a legitimate MVP candidate. I mean, he had to make the plays. So, I don't think the drop-off is going to be that much, and I think it's a really favorable situation for him. And to go back to the run game point you had earlier, running game is a quarterback's best friend, and I think Seattle will improve their run game quite a bit this year.
We're certainly hoping so, with all the changes on the offensive coaching staff and scheme and everything else. It's interesting that you mentioned what you did about Sam Darnold just before you came on. I saw a stat that surprised me, and it is top 5 quarterbacks by EPA per play in close games where the win probability is between 30 and 70% after halftime since 2022. And before I even looked at the top 5, I thought, well, Geno's probably going to be on that list. He led the NFL and come from behind wins, right? No, he's not in the top 5. It goes Hurts 1, Mahomes 3, Stroud 4, Allen 5, Sam Darnold number 2 overall in EPA in close games since 2022. I was surprised by that. Can we look ahead a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Can I add one more point on Sam Darnold real quick?
Absolutely. Yeah, please do.
I just want to say, and I don't want to bring up bad memories, but the game last year against you guys, the big play to Justin Jefferson, whether that receiver at the end, whether that player is Jefferson on the receiving end or Jackson Smith-Njigba or Cooper Kupp or Torrey Horton or whoever, Sam still had to evade pressure to make that throw with less than 4 minutes in the fourth quarter with the game on the line. So that, it's not, I know the pumpkin at the final 2 games of the year, and I truly wish Sam the best, but he led the team to 14 wins, and that does not happen by accident. So like I said, you saw it firsthand last year when he went into Lumen Field, and that was the player Sam was for most of the year. And I know, unfortunately, the 2 biggest games of the year, what happened, but that was the player Sam was for most of the year, was what you saw in person.
It's funny you reference that play, because the Sam Darnold skeptics will say, you got to fix that offensive line, keep them upright, or it's going to be a disaster. And I always point to that play. Like, he made that work. And then, oh, by the way, the Vikings went out and reshaped their entire interior offensive line in the offseason because it wasn't that good either. So
right, that's people don't bring that up. Our interior, I'll tell you, our interior offensive line last year was horrible. So
the 2026 draft. And I know I can hear some of the eyes rolling out there already. The all too early mock drafts drive some fans crazy, but then also they tend to get tons of traffic and views because people are interested. We're not going to go deep into it, but you made a comment that caught my eye a couple of weeks ago, just about how much you liked what you've seen so far of the 2026 draft. And you said, and this is a quote from a video you did on it, the 2026 class is going to be very, very fun. There is elite talent throughout the first round, which is welcome news for those of us that just lived through the draft cycle this year, because we just heard ad nauseum about how it lacked elite talent at the top, which kind of made for an interesting first 2 days of the draft, really. And it did thankfully have quite a bit of depth, at least through day 2 after that. You did a mock draft through the first round for the entire league. You had the Seahawks, and granted, we're not going to get too deep into this, at 11. It's based on Vegas odds. I've already talked about that. It is what it is, but we have to go with what the mock draft simulators say, right? You had them taking Jordan Tyson, going receiver again, 6'1", 195 out of Arizona State, 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns last year. They just obviously went out and got Cooper Kupp. We know about the injury history and, getting closer to 30. They draft a couple guys this year in Torrey Horton and Ricky White. The thought process, though, behind going receiver for them at 11 next year, and specifically what you like about Tyson.
So Jordan, the thought process is, hey, we just traded DK Metcalf. JSN is obviously, he's not a bad player, but he's your compact guy. Typically, though, not all the time, but typically teams like to kind of build their receiver room. And, DK was the big bodied, where JSN was the smaller guy. So not that Jordan Tyson is DK Metcalf. He's kind of a one-on-one player just in how he's physically built. But 6'1", 200 pounds, like you said, just had a really good year for Arizona State. Had over 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns. Really like his skill set. He's not thin, but he's not, he's solidly built, right? And he's a player that Sam Leavitt looked to a lot down the stretch of the 24 season. And obviously everyone wants to talk about Cam Scatabo with Arizona State from last year, but Jordan Tyson still had nearly 1,100 yards and double-digit touchdowns, which doesn't happen by accident. So really like the production there, and I think he would be, in his rookie year, a good number 2 to JSN's clear number 1. Now, other positions that I think Seattle could potentially go next year, I think corner would certainly be up there depending on how the Tariq Woolen situation plays out. And obviously we know that Mike McDonald loves his corners, and you can never have enough corner. You can never have enough pass rush in today's NFL. And ultimately right now, I think Seattle is probably a little better off at pass rush depth wise than they are corner wise in terms of what they would spend first round draft capital on. So I think those positions, I think receiver or corner would certainly be in play for Seattle next year.
What are some of the other position groups that seem to have a good amount of depth or might be the strengths of the first round from what you've seen so far?
It's quarterback and edge, and it is going to be a very, very fun class. I typically try not to use the G word. The G word is generational because I think that word is far too thrown around. It's thrown around far too much. I do think the 2024 quarterback class was generational with the 6 in the top 12. That was the most ever in the first 12 picks. But this quarterback class is going to have, Cade Klubnik from Clemson. It's going to have Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. I don't think Arch Manning is going to declare that, or they've actually already pretty much said that he's not going to declare.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
But Lenora Sellers from South Carolina is a prospect I like a lot. I haven't even discussed him too much on the channel other than the way too early 2026 mock draft. But I threw on his tape in preparation for the way too early 2026 mock draft. He reminds me a lot of a young Donovan McNabb for the Eagles. And he's big, he's explosive, he has really good touch, and I can't wait to see how he plays in 2025 for the Gamecocks.
You mentioned edge, and Seahawk fans, as we sit here today, might not think it's a need, but it sure could be 12 months from now. We know about Uchenna Nwosu's injury history. Boye Mafe's on an expiring contract. Marcus Lawrence, 32 years old. Derek Hall will be entering the final year of his rookie deal next year. You say it's a strong edge class. Who are a couple of names that might be available in that range, sort of middle of the first round, that you think have that elite upside?
So I think Ruben Bain, an edge from Miami, would be a textbook Mike McDonald guy. He has heavy hands. He's a really good player for Miami. He'll be a hot commodity. There's two pass rushers from Clemson this year, and TJ Parker and Peter Woods. I would be absolutely shocked if Seattle has a chance at either of those guys, unless they have, barring where they are now, of course, but unless they have a major drop off. But I think Ruben Bain would be your guy. I think Dennis Sutton from Penn State's a really good player. And I also really like Tyreek Sapp from Florida. Those are, if you have Ruben Bain or Sapp from Florida, I think both Florida boy, well, one's from Miami, one's from Florida. They both play in the state of Florida, but right. I think both of those players would make a lot of sense for Seattle next year, especially Ruben Bain.
And then one other position that's going to get a lot of focus this season is potentially right tackle. Abraham Lucas finally back. They finally figured out what it was with the knee, corrected it, played the second half of last season. It wasn't 100%, but it was a clear upgrade over the other guys that they ran out there the first half of the season. He's getting to attack an offseason fully healthy, but the question remains, what are they going to get out of him? Is he going to be the player they expect? And if he is, then he's probably going to command some money at a time that they're also looking to extend Charles Cross. So if they need to look at right tackle in the draft next year, is the timing going to be right for them? Are there some guys that make sense there?
No, it absolutely is. There's a prospect that I thought a year ago this time. I thought Riley Mahlman, he's a player from Wisconsin. I thought there was a decent chance that he would declare this year. He went back to school, but he's a guy that I think would make a lot of sense for Seattle. He's a really good anchor. He is just your typical, again, like we said with Gray's Abel, he's a floor-raising offensive lineman, and he's a guy that I think will be in that 25 to 45 range where probably a limited ceiling, but a guy that, if he starts for your team for 5 or 6 years, you wouldn't bat an eye and play at a solid level. Again, not the elite level, but a solid level. So Riley Mahlman, I think, would be a solid player for Seattle if they were to go with him.
Hard to go wrong with Wisconsin offensive linemen. Let's finish with this. I want to zoom the lens out just a little bit. Your thoughts on the NFC West as a whole, where the Seahawks fit into that and kind of how you see that placement.
I'm going to be honest. I will do a video on this coming up. Not within like the next day or two or even 3 days, but the NFC West is absolutely loaded. I can't wait till, my time, the 405 games this year, the 425 games. The NFC West clashes are going to be just incredibly fun. Whether it's Rams, Cardinals, 49ers, Seahawks, it doesn't matter. It is going to be, in my opinion, at worst, the third best division in football, and that's at worst. This is such a good division all around. I think the Cardinals are a really good team. I think they're an under the radar team. The Rams are, of course, they have a lot of buzz from last year. They were the team that was closest to beating the Eagles in the playoffs. The 49ers, honestly, I don't think they're going to be bad. I think they have a lower floor than probably the national media does. But I like the 49ers. I like several of their players. You guys might feel different being Seahawks fans, but I'm a big George Kittle guy. But they're going through a roster turnover period where age and then plus the Brock Purdy contract. And, it's going to be different from having the cheapest quarterback to paying him $50+ million. So I think there's going to be a bit of a transition window for the 49ers. So honestly, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they finish third or fourth in the division next year. But this is going to be a division that I think is going to be from top to bottom separated by maybe 2 games, maybe 3 games. I mean, there might be like a, and I say that because you might head into week 18 where one team's 10-6, one team's 8-8, and then inevitably you go 11-6, 8-9, where that would be 3 games. But I really think heading into week 18, barring major injuries, that everybody's going to be in that 8 to 10 win range.
Yeah, especially considering the rotational divisions they play are the NFC South, AFC South. Like that's going to, we could have 4 teams within all shooting for double digits at the end of the year, even if they kind of beat each other up and split during the season. Good stuff. It was kind of a bummer today with the announcement that the NFC East is going to be the in-season Hard Knocks this year, along with Buffalo Bills being the training camp. I guess they just don't want to move any of their equipment out of the Northeast this year. They just want to keep it all there. There had been some indications maybe the NFC West would have worked for that divisional one, which would have been pretty cool. But I don't know, maybe next year. Garrett, man, this was great. I really, really appreciate it. It was fantastic, as I expected. I think the viewers will agree. Hopefully we'll see a bunch of cool comments down below. Let people know what you're working on if they want to check out your channel over the next week or so.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. My channel is Football Analysis, and help my man Dan out. Like, comment, subscribe, and like I said, I'm rooting for the Seahawks this year, and I appreciate you having me on.
And I will link your channel down below. Appreciate your time, man. Let's have you back on soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, how'd you like that, right? I would never want to rank the young creators that I've had on the channel because I think they're all great and I want to respect them all. But let's just say he would be he'd be up there. Give me your thoughts down in the comments, what you liked or didn't like about what he had to say, and chew on that for about the next 24 hours until I release another show. And the best way to know when I do that is hit that bell for notification of all future episodes. All the other ways you can support the show are listed down below in the description. But the best way, subscribe to the channel. Also, coming up Friday, which for some of you when you watch this, because this is released late Wednesday night, will be tomorrow. Launching the new channel on the Forever Network. I'm calling it for now. Not formally, but, let's go with it. Mariners Forever. It's been a long time since I've gotten to talk about baseball, my other passion, going to do that with Michael Thompson, formerly of Soto Mojo. You've seen him on this channel talking Seahawks too, with his work that he does for field goals. But Michael and I are going to get that channel going on Friday, kind of recap how the Mariners season has gone so far, take a little bit of a look ahead to what might happen between now and the trade deadline and the Major League Draft coming up soon as well. Really excited about that. That is Mariners Forever. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel so you're ready to roll when that episode comes out. And you can follow the Twitter account. Also, it's Mariners_4 Mariners Forever was taken by somebody from 10 years ago that posted no tweets and has like 7 followers. That's just kind of how it goes. But really looking forward to that. Would love to see you over there as well. Until next time, however, let's wrap this up the way we always do. Forever and always, go Hawks. Thanks for watching.